This is Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. This is the long after sequel to Space Marine, where you dive into the shoes of Titus once again and work alongside a group of two others for a 3-man team, where you really do get to feel like you are a badass Space Marine that is sent in to deal with the crazy invasion of this, well, basically organic eating parasite type species. And yeah, it's pretty wild and kind of fucking awesome. So we're diving in and showcasing the campaign. The game is split into 3 main areas. So we've got the campaign, which is actually quite decently lengthy, where you can play alone or you can grab yourself a group of pals to work cooperatively together. That experience is supplemented by the PvE like operations mode. So you guys are coming and doing little side missions. Basically the campaign, occasionally there'll be a spot at the beginning of a mission where there'll be like a sub-team that you're kind of talking about or ordering, and then you kind of hear a little bit about that while you're going and doing your mission. And that team is sort of the role that you are filling in these like operations. And yeah, it's kind of a neat extra way to expand the story with some side adjacent content, and it actually works out quite well. And then we have finally the multiplayer. So since I was playing this ahead of launch, we were only able to play this offline, so I can't really speak for the multiplayer. It is up to 12 players, 6v6 battling across a few different modes, with the option to basically extend the status and the style and the scope of the game in a rather interesting way, and I look forward to diving into that. And yeah, like I said, we're ahead of launch and everything is offline in this one at the current point in time, so that's just kind of the perspective that I can give currently. So yeah, we're mostly focused on the campaign, where you can work with your AI pals, or get some real players, which would probably help quite a bit, because this game actually does have quite an edge of difficulty to it. I handled it efficiently, and I didn't die too often, but there definitely was some pretty harrowing scenes, and some rather, difficult sections here or there, but I thoroughly enjoyed the campaign. I thought it was a fun romp. Kind of reminded me of like the 360 era, sort of when you were playing like Gears of War for the first time. A little bit of maybe of Halo mixed in there in terms of like having a bit of shielding into your like abilities and kind of the damage you can take, and you get these ultra things. Mostly the goal here was to make you feel powerful, strong, and I think they accomplished that, while also not making you invincible, where it's like your life is constantly on the line as you are battling against these monstrous forces. And while it does seem like this is mostly an invasion of sorts from these giant organic kind of monstrous creatures, there's a little bit more under the surface that you will discover as you continue to survive and battle your way through the hordes. And there are difficulty options too, in case you want something a little bit more grueling or maybe something a little bit easier going, but this is the normal level of difficulty on a pretty early level or area in the game that I thought was kind of a good showcase, because it's chaotic and gives you a little bit of an idea of the progression and the action that happens within this game. So here on the Series X, we have 2 different visual options. What you've been seeing is the 1080p 60 FPS performance mode. It is like, the game itself is visually quite impressive, I think. Like the scenes, the set pieces, everything like that look quite wonderful. But yeah, the game is very, very murky at this performance level. Like a lot of the scenes, especially these water areas, you can definitely tell, I guess, we're just quite demanding, because they are really aesthetically quite good looking, but you can tell that the resolution is a very, very murky target, which is a bit disappointing. And there are performance issues, like it's not perfectly smooth. there's not really anything that like stands out as being like, oh, this isn't something you can play through and be disappointed at frame rate wise. But there's definitely hiccups here or there. The other option, which we can switch to at any point, we can also choose whether or not your helmet is on or off, which is kind of cool. And there's your motion blur intensity if you'd like to change that. So then we can switch to quality mode and we can apply that. And then you'll see that we go to a 4K 30 FPS mode, which, is quite a difference, like fidelity wise. It's quite a difference, but like the game just doesn't really feel good to play at this mode. You can certainly play the game at the 30 FPS mode, but it just really doesn't feel great. And it looks like there's a lot of like reconstruction in the environment too. It's like FSR, so that is something that you might notice. But like, yeah, this is not the way that I would recommend playing it, outside of maybe taking a look at it and kind of getting an idea of like just how good this could look. Actually, this game might really ideally be kind of experienced on another, like a PC platform high-end, if that's possible, because I bet this game can look really, really great. Not to say it doesn't on the Series X, like I am, the 60 FPS mode isn't bad, but it is like murky, and I kept sitting there thinking, I wonder how good this really could look, if that makes sense. That was popping up in my mind fairly often. So we're going to go back to the 60 FPS mode, because I really can't stand the performance level there. And yeah, anyways, and just like the fluidity just popping right back up makes all the difference in the world. Crossplay is present here, and crossplay is apparently between the console platforms for competitive stuff, so that's kind of a good idea, I think, for sure. The game does have some technical problems, and that comes in the form of crashing. There is frequent crashes in this game, which was a bit disappointing. At least the checkpoints are somewhat good in terms of not having you miss too much, but it was definitely a bit of a it was a drag on the gameplay that you would be playing and you'd do a big action sequence, you'd be fighting, mulching through enemies, and then it would crash and you'd have to reboot it. It was frequent. At one point I did get an update and I thought that might help, because I'm assuming that was like the day one update, but yeah, it did not appear to fix the crashing frequency, which is frequent enough. Like, it's not like it's happening all the time, but it's happening enough where it's like, if you were playing this with others, it would be kind of annoying having to keep, like, setting up lobbies and stuff like that. So I am hoping that is patched or fixed up, and it was just something I wanted to mention, because in an experience that I really am, like, really quite enjoyed, it was quite a bit of a disappointment to just have these kinds of, like, that kind of technical issue, as seemingly it would pop up in some areas. It would pop up more frequently than other areas. Like, it would happen, like, you'd crash a few times in a row in one spot until, like, kind of you got it right or it didn't have an issue, and then from then on it would be like fine, and then you get to another part, another level later on, and yeah, just a little disappointing, and a bit of a disappointment generally overall, because everything else in this is pretty cool. The combat's sweet. I like the gun options. I like the crazy sense of scale, the ridiculous amount of creatures on the screen at once. Even if you're not specifically, like, fighting things that are on the map, there are, like, tons of things in the distance in the backdrop going on. Like, this is actually one of the more, dare I say, tame and or lame, like, segments, because you get to, like, these crazy large cities, and there's just, like, other Marines, there's regular human soldiers, and they are just fighting in this, like, massive scale setup that is just like, wow, this looks so cool. And, like, some segments do look sharper than others too, especially if you're indoors, but Yeah, I wish it wasn't so murky, but at the same time, I am very happy that we actually get the frame rate level that we get. That was very much appreciated for making the shooter feel good in quality in terms of like, you know, kind of combat and movement and shooting. And then of course when we see that eventually trickle over to being able to do the multiplayer, I think that'll be great. And as I had mentioned, like, this is a meaty campaign. Like, it is lengthy. It has a good amount of gameplay time to it. Then you can expand those journeys and adventures with the operations, so you get even more gameplay time. So there actually is quite a lot of, you know, content to this game. I think that's the big thing. And I really wish I had a good working idea of the multiplayer, and that's, you know, a little bit of a disappointment there that I wasn't able to kind of dive in and fully give you information on that context. But yeah, this was a very tight timeline for reviewing this game, like extremely tight. So yeah, it was pretty much a grind for sure, but it was really quite enjoyable. I had fun with it. There's some elements of the campaign that I definitely feel kind of make this seem like it was something that was kind of designed with last gen in mind, just in terms of like you'll constantly get to elevators and you'll hold X down to get to the next area, or like, you know, kind of like loading screen, like push the logs up. So I theorize this was supposed to be on other like last gen platforms, so maybe they'll try to do that too in the future. But like, yeah, it was kind of interesting that that was something that I paid attention to. If I had mentioned it, I want to expand upon the concept regardless. This was definitely seemingly put together by the team that did World War Z, because like, I'm pretty sure because it's Saber, and you can definitely tell that they were using a lot of the World War Z technology in this game, specifically this part that I'm highlighting right here, because you get a couple segments like this which are pretty ridiculous, where you just have bazillions of these unsettling creatures like running towards you and scouring across the environment. It's quite something to take in. It just, again, the sense of scale in this game is really cool, because you do feel like you're amidst like this massive battle that's going on, and you are kind of just like this brief kind of like part of the chaos, and it's just wild. Like, the level of detail in regards to like the different weapons and tools and individuals, and I love it's always about like, you know, brothers and kind of like for the Imperium, and, you know, like really hardcore hitting the lore, I think, specifically well, that made this like really interesting, because they just like go all in on like basically being like, we are 100% for our cause, and even the suggestion of not being for the cause is, you know, like heresy and like not noble. And yeah, this one is quite a wild ride gameplay wise. I love the gore levels to it, the chaos of it all, the craziness that goes on. You get like a wide range of great weapons. I love using the chainsaw, but there's other like crazy large scale like things that you could just smash enemies to bits with. Then you have like this huge array of different weapons. You know, like you've got some that are like grenade launchers, and you've got some that are kind of like snipers, and there's like heavy bolt weapons, and you might get like a flamethrower type thing. Like, there are a lot of really fun tools that you can take advantage of in order to like absolutely just decimate and thrash the, you know, piles of enemies that are like attempting to get in your way. And then you've got your teammates working with you, and as I mentioned, like, it's so neat seeing like just the utter destruction, because in the grim dark future there is only war. I'm supposed to open my video review with that. Can't believe I forgot to do that. It's gonna be crazy. Anyways, doesn't matter, I got to it at this point. but no, it's really quite interesting to just like see this really authentic large-scale effort within the Warhammer universe, Like, there's lots and lots of Warhammer content out there, and it's just great to have, like, this premium, large-scale, chaotic game of, like, madness. And, oh, some of them actually made it inside this time. That's nice. It's also really cool, because, like, people-sized, like, enemies, you can actually sort of just run through, and they, like, explode into, like, like pulpy bits of, like, stuff. It's kind of wild. As I said, there is, like, when you're moving in this game, there is a heavy weighting to your character and your combat. But this is what I was talking about for, like, loading screen segments. And I theorize they're a little slower right now, too, because it attempts to, like, connect to multiplayer, which we don't have access to, because it's not, like, online and functional or something at the moment, which it will be for the full launch, obviously. But, yeah, it's quite a wild time, for sure. I love just, like, the chaotic elements of this game, the scope of it. The campaign was really, really enjoyable. I thought the pacing of it was really well done, too. You know, like, it didn't feel like it was too long. I actually felt like I probably could have enjoyed even more of it. It left me, like, satisfied, but also being like, I want more too. So I'm hoping that this actually leads way to this style of gameplay kind of being expanded upon, if that makes sense. Maybe we get additional, like, Space Marine type efforts would be great in the future. Like, this type of gameplay where it's like this third person, like, gritty, grim, dark sort of, you know, the Warhammer universe, especially like 40k, is just endless. Like, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. And as I mentioned, though, like, the design of this game is just really well done. It is very linear, in case you are wondering. You literally go from, like, room to room, area to area, blasting enemies, and there's crazy set pieces, which is why I felt like more 360 era in terms of just, like, having this cool sense of, like, scale that isn't just, like, too ridiculous, but great over-the-top set pieces and designs. You can find audio logs in the environment that, like, you know, give you a little bit of context into what happened in certain situations, and just the whole thing is so well done and well crafted and pretty well polished too, outside of the crashes. I really, really wish they could have had that cleaned up, and I'm hoping by the time, you know, maybe even like a day one thing, but I'm pretty sure I have the day one update because it, like, interrupted my gameplay at 1.2, which was kind of funny. But, like, I do hope the version you get to try out for this game is as awesome as this game actually is, because other than that, it's really, really good, and it's a lot of fun. Especially if you like these mature, large-scale, third-person kind of shooter games. If you like Warhammer, this is, like, some of the best quality we get for, like, video games in terms of Warhammer. I mean, there's been some cool Warhammer games here or there, I'm not knocking them, but, like, in terms of actually hitting something that is nearing, like, a AAA type of setup, this is, like, pretty good in that regard. And I like the characters too, and the performances I thought were well put together, you know, in terms of guys being, like, super intense. That's where the bro kind of stuff, like, where it feels like the original Gears of War, where it was sort of like, you know, these guys are always for the cause, and, you know, pain is everything for the Emperor, and yeah, they really don't hold back. Like, it is grim, it is dark, everyone is messed up, and, you know, if you're not with the cause, you're not, like, contributing properly to, like, the society of this darkness, and yeah, it's all quite well done. I am curious, though, how much the multiplayer portion adds to this gameplay-wise. I think it looks interesting from what I've seen. I am, again, very disappointed that I didn't get to, like, really dive into that and kind of review it for the launch. Like, you know, obviously I'm talking about it, and you get a few different game modes, and I'm sure we'll be stream covering it, but yeah, that was a thing where I was kind of, like, really wanting to present that, but I think still as a review, I kind of, you know, I got through a campaign, I got to see our operational setup there, and operations mode, and I think there's a good amount of content to this, and the multiplayer to me is just like a nice welcomed extra addition to what is a pretty cool, sweet package of just chaotic Warhammer action. I think most people that try this will probably love what it has to offer gameplay-wise. It's great.